Hello friends, I'm Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. This is my June wrap up. Here are my stats. If you care about any of them, I talk them through in my quarterly wrap ups. It'll come tomorrow actually. And my yearly, my year, oh my God, my yearly wrap up? My end of year wrap up. Samantha told me to organize my wrap up by most accurate cover to least accurate cover, because apparently I've done title before. Now it's time for cover. So that's what we've done. Most accurate cover, Call Me Indian by Fried Sisakamoose, because that's him. This is a memoir. It follows him in his hockey career. It follows him at a residential school. It discusses a lot of really difficult things that he experienced. But it's also written in tandem with Meg Masters, and they have just woven, I don't know, this it feels like you're sitting down. Maybe it's because I had a grandfather who lived in Saskatchewan like him. And so hearing stories of getting in the back of a pickup truck in the middle of winter and just having to lie down and get jostled around with all your friends to go somewhere for hours, that feels like a grandfathery sit down tale to me. So in that way, it was warm and inviting, though it was a really difficult, he went through a lot of really difficult things. Obviously, just choosing to share this story and shed light on the horrors of residential schools, the trauma that he endured, is a really vulnerable and brave thing to do. He talks about in here how a lot of other people have told his story, or little snippets of interviews go places and people assume things about him, or stories have been inspired by him, and he just wanted to sit down and explain what happened in his life and how he spent so much time away from his family because of these opportunities with hockey, and because he was stripped away for so many years, he didn't want to stay away. So there's this grappling back and forth with wanting to play professional hockey but wanting to be with his family. He gets married, he has children, he becomes a chief, and there's so much that happens before and after an NHL career, and a lot of those stories aren't told unless they're by the person themselves. So this is really good, and I gave it 5 stars. The cover is accurate. Next, I put another hockey book because it's two people about to kiss. Well, I mean, I guess if we want to talk about the accuracy of covers, if they were getting it on the cover, which I wouldn't want to see anyway, I'm just saying that would be more accurate, because there's probably only a couple moments in the book where they're about to kiss. Most of it, they're actively engaged with each other. This is a very STEAM-centric hockey book, and it's called The Fakeout by Stephanie Archer. We're following the Vancouver Storm fake hockey team, and I don't remember anything about this. I don't even remember the characters' names. What I do remember is she's the physiotherapist. He is the professional hockey player. She has an ex-boyfriend on the team. There's jealousy, there's conflict, there's family pressure to deal with, and it all gets resolved and they live happily ever after. The next accurate cover is going to be Story of the Eye by George Bataille, because this eyeball outside of its socket is unfortunately indeed prominent in this little story, along with many other oblong, spherical shaped items that get inserted into a lady. It's about teenagers and it's sexually depraved. I never want to think about that book again. Thank you very much. I didn't rate it. Oh, I did rate this one. It was a 3. Next, I put 27 Minutes by Ashley Tate, because you can see that is, well, it looks like a road, but it's supposed to be a bridge. I guess we could call that a bridge. And there's shattered glass, which indicates an accident. So 10 years ago, there was a car accident, and we have to hear about that car accident many, many times, and the physical and emotional scarring that has been done to a girl, and how she thinks that she is just as important and deserves just as much attention as the girl who died in the accident. And we're in her POV and many others as they talk about shutting the bridge down because people die on it, and who was dating who 10 years ago, and who was mad at who 10 years ago, and who was responsible for the crash 10 years ago, and who's been missing for 10 years. This was exhausting, poorly written, didn't like it, even a little bit. 1 star, so sorry. Next, we've got Comemadre by Roque? La Roque. That can't be right. Hold on.
Soy Roque Larraqui. Tengo 40 años. Soy Roque Larraqui. Tengo. Soy Roque Larraqui. Rogalaraki. Translated by Heather Cleary. That one's more clear for me. And this is accurate because, yes, there's an eyeball, but behind it, there's someone doing something to someone's head. This is a story of decapitation and the look into life after death and scientists trying to understand things. There was a lot of symbolism. It didn't really stick with me. This is my skip of the month. Last month I decided I'm just gonna pick like 2 or 3 books that I don't want to review because I don't like filming wrap-ups. And this is how I'm gonna stay keen on continuing to create content. This one I think is accurate because it's just a girl staring deep into your soul, and that feels right. Never Saw Me Coming by Vera Kurian. This is a story of psychopaths being studied by this professor, doctor guy at a university. He has put on this program where he believes that psychopaths can live fulfilling, safe lives under the proper guidance, and he wants to help study them and figure things out. So there have been 7 invited to this university, and our main character, just read this book, Chloe, I was gonna say Phoebe. Is there another Phoebe here? She agrees to go to this school because she has ulterior motives. They're gonna pay for her to attend her tuition, and she wants to track down this guy who also goes there, get in on his inner circle, and get revenge on something that he did to her. Little does she know, one of the other people in the program or someone related to the program is killing people in the program, and now she's in danger. But that's not gonna stop her from her mission, and also having a little budding relationship in here. And I just had a good time. It's a very suspend your disbelief kind of thriller. Not the most satisfying ending. That had a good amount of mystery though, a good amount of characters. I found it interesting. I didn't tell you. I gave that one a 3. Moving swiftly along to The Haar by David Sodergren. This I gave a 5, and we're slowly decreasing in accuracy of the cover. Not because this monster is wrong. I appreciate how it's depicted here, so I don't have to come up with it on my own. But because of the haar and the idea of this Scottish coastline and the fog and the ocean and all of the seaside vibes that this pulls off atmospherically with perfection, I feel like that could have been on the cover to give even better vibes like to what the story actually is. So we're following this woman whose husband recently died, and now she's on her own to protect the family home from being sold, taken, burnt down by developers who are coming in and buying everything and changing life as they know it. And she ends up meeting this like creature that comes out of the water, and grotesque, horrific deaths follow. But it's also a love story, and I wish I could tell you why. And I think you just need to read it because the direction this goes is just so my taste. Then we've got Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin. This was translated by Megan McDowell. And though it doesn't depict like the actual creatures, they're called Kentuckys, I don't think I would want to see those on the cover because I like to envision them in my own mind. They're like a mix of like a stuffed animal, but a robot, but a Furby. And I just think all of the eyes like this is accurate enough. So we're following all of these different people who either purchased a Kentucky or are watchers with Kentucky. So they're these little animals that you keep in your house as like little companions. They can do stuff for you, and they all have a camera in them, and somebody in the world who you never find out who they are because there's no communication back and forth. It's just them viewing through the camera and like doing stuff around the house. But people just get very invested in them because they see them as companions, or the people who are watching, you know, find families to become invested in, and they feel loved and cared for, even though they're not actually directly communicating with them. It's like their physical embodiment as this creature. And it gets as weird as you might expect. People are witnessing horrific things but have no way of like communicating
what's happening or trying to help people. Kentuckys end up in people's houses who like aren't aware they have a camera in them. Children become obsessed with them. Their parents don't know they're being watched. And it was just a really interesting take. There's like 5 or 6 different ones that you follow, different partnerships. People who are doing like weird things in front of the Kentucky to get a rise out of the person on their side, but they never know who they are. It was interesting. I gave it a 4. I think it could have been a little more satisfying at the end of the day, but I had a really good time. It's like kind of horror, kind of sci-fi. I don't know how to describe it. Next we have Such Small Hands by Andre Barba. Also kind of hard to put into a specific genre, like horror, but not really. It's translated by Lisa Dillman. And it's about these girls in an orphanage and a new girl that comes and how she kind of shakes up the place. Part of it is written as a collective voice. And the doll feels symbolically accurate because they envision themselves at times as dolls with no emotion, no agency, and I think 1, it's like a product of trauma and just like shutting down, and 2, like enjoying the active choice to shut down and be like cared for by other girls in the orphanage. It was a dark book, but it didn't go as like dark and disturbing as I thought that it could. It's short and weird. I gave it 4 stars. Fantasticland I only put in the middle as far as accuracy because I don't think there's a roller coaster mentioned in this book. And I know that like that's not the point. This just depicts an amusement park. It takes place at an amusement park. Absolutely true. But the roller coaster specifically, I don't think is the best depiction of what it could be. So this is an interview style format. It's by Mike Buckvin. And Fantasticland is this competing amusement park with like Disneyland, Universal, and there's a hurricane and all the people who work there get trapped. Like hundreds of people get trapped and they immediately kind of go into survival mode. There's reasons behind it, and create these little groups, clans, and start killing each other. And it's just a thriller. There's no mystery in here. There's no reveals. There's no fun to it in that way. You're just reading interviews of people reflecting on what happened and why things devolved so quickly in this isolated environment. Definitely a suspend your disbelief kind of situation. Doesn't have a lot of substance to it. In fact, I was really surprised by how many people loved this when I read it for my besties book club, but it was such a beloved one. I ended up giving it a 4, but there's not that much to it. It feels like it could have been written in like one afternoon. Just like chaos. Doesn't need to reflect on anything, come back to anything. No topics are like deep. It's just a chaotic, deadly time. Next, we've got 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this Strange World by Elif Shafak. It's just a face, and I guess it's an eye, so you could say it's about seeing things through Layla's eyes and her reflecting on things. So it's in the middle, you know, it's not inaccurate. I don't think anything here I would give under a 3 for accuracy. There's nothing like wild here that I disagree with. There's also another cover though, and it's just kind of a typical like pretty general fiction cover. So that doesn't really do anything more so related to the story than this one. But in here, I gave it a 5. We're following a woman who grew up with a lot of trauma, and she ends up getting sex trafficked and dying. And that's how the book opens, is with her death. And in the 10 minutes and 38 seconds following, while her brain still has activity, she is reflecting on her life and all of the stories she's been told, her father's impact on the family, their choice to have children, like her birth. And then we also meet a lot of her friends through her eyes, but also we're just kind of like off sometimes in chapters where we meet various people and learn things about them. And it's about this like friendship group and how they come together to support this woman. Some of them know her for longer than others, and they just see that she's not being treated with respect. And we find out like what happened to her and why. And we see these people love and care for her. It's a little bit like
fun too. And it's obviously interesting because it plays with time, and it really was right up my alley. I need to go take Liam to the eye doctor, so I will be back in an hour to do the second half. I'm back. Let's continue. Oh, we have tidal creatures. Okay. Okay, the publisher kindly sent this to me. They sent me all the books in the Middle Game series as they come out, which is so very kind. Middle Game is one of my favorite books of all time. It's about the alchemical arts. It's magic by way of science. And the first book is just so successful because Roger and Dodger are incredible characters. Their dynamic, their backstory, their magic, like how they always come back to each other, but then there's somebody who's like created them and wants them to ascend to godhood, and it's just like it's such an ambitious series. Seasonal Fears came out and I gave it a 2, and I just didn't like the world building. I thought that it was just doing a little too much explanation where we didn't need things. It's just so thorough. Because clearly Sean McGuire has this whole world she already knows about, and she's just slowly letting us in on everything. And this is a 4-book series. The way that Roger and Dodger were utilized in the second book was not my favorite. It started to feel a little bit cheesy, and this series is just starting to feel like everyone is a caricature, and it just doesn't have the same heart that the first book had. I've come to just accept that fact, that I love existing in this universe, but I don't like, it was Middle Game. Middle Game is my book, and that's fine. So this one was a 3 point something. I liked it more than Seasonal Fears. It still had the issue of world building that I felt with Seasonal Fears. I don't know if it's like Shannon has taken, 2 years between books, and so she's like, I have to remind myself what's happening, or if she feels like she has to remind us, but like we're fully capable of, rereading before anyone. So it's just, there's so much reflecting on what's already happened and reminding me of what already happened. And Roger and Dodger being like shoehorned in these stories is not my favorite because it's not their stories, it's somebody else's. So every time they come into the book, I want to feel excited, like it's revisiting an old friend, but I don't like it. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like the characters that I knew before. And they're just reliving, just talking about everything, like explaining how they were created, and I just don't need to hear it for like the 10th time. What this one does better than Seasonal Fears is give compelling characters. The characters in here are, how does it describe them? The moon gods have incarnated into the human world, and they manifest in like people. So it's kind of like sharing a mind. So you are a person, but you are also the physical embodiment of the moon goddess, and you have certain responsibilities, but there's also a lot of people all embodying the same thing, and you're kind of taking turns opening this gate, being the protector. I'm parsing, but being the protector of the moon. And you can get captivated by that and not be able to like leave the moon, like it can just take over. It's like drugs, and so the moon gods are all like protecting each other and working together, and they like refer to each other, and sometimes you like are that embodiment, and sometimes you're just like a person and you speak depending on who you are in the moment. It's just a really interesting concept, and meeting the gods is great. They made for an interesting story, but they just feel like a little campy. Now the cover is good symbolism because the moon isn't like literally on fire, but the moon, everything's on fire. Everything's bad, everything's going wrong. And somebody is out to get these gods. They are taking them out. And it's kind of a mystery. I think the pacing wasn't perfect for me, but I was captivated the entire time. It had interesting characters. I'm excited for the series to wrap up. I want to see what she has in mind for the final book. Every one of them like represents their own season. I'm happy to have read it, but not 100% satisfied. Moving on, we've got The Blue Book of Nebo by Manon Stephen Ross. I think that this is like, it's an accurate cover because it's blue. It's a blue book. It's called The Blue Book. There is a rabbit head, and I just feel like at the same time as I wish this was depicted differently,
because of what the actual rabbit like in the story looks like. I feel like if it did look like that, it might make people think that this is like a weird fantasy sci-fi kind of book, and that's not the audience you want to pull into this, because it's just a really slow apocalyptic story. Because of nuclear war, people are gone, and we only know about a mother and son, and they're the only people that they know currently exist where they live, and they're just trying to survive. And occasionally they will encounter something that feels like, I can't even remember if it like touched on why the animals like look, some animals have like two heads, like there's some weird stuff that they're witnessing, and I think I'm supposed to interpret it as like that's what has been created by, you know, the chemical warfare. But obviously the book's not about that, so that's fine. It's like there's a rabbit and then there's like the silhouette of a rabbit behind it, and I feel like there's a lot of things you can interpret based on that. But this book was beautiful. It made me cry. It's a very tender relationship and two people just struggling and connecting and surviving. That's really all it is. I sobbed. 5 stars. Next, we've got The Employees by Olga Raven. This was translated by Martin Aitken. This was translated as well, but by the author themselves. This one is another series of interviews, and it's these humans and humanoids on a spaceship, and all we know going into it is that they're being asked to take care of these objects in space, and we don't really know what that means or what the objects are, and it's very confusing and strange for a long time. And the objects start to impact the humans and humanoids, and the person who has employed all of these people has to make decisions about or has made decisions about what is going to happen with the current research that is going on. It's just a really interesting look at like workplace culture and being an employee and just being one of many, which I think is what the cover's kind of depicting, but also, is this the objects? And also it's commentary on just the human condition and how these humans versus humanoids behave differently and share attributes but don't, and how the objects like impact what they want out of life. It was really, really interesting. It was 5 stars. I think I need to reread it. I should have reread it immediately because now I don't know when I'm going to, but I think starting it over would just be a really beneficial reading experience. Then we've got The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. You might be thinking it's just a girl on the cover. Is it not about a girl? Is it not a girl watching hockey? It is, sure, but like, why aren't there 2 people on it? This is just as romantic as this. I would say more romantic, less steamy. But this gives the impression that maybe it could be like a women's fiction kind of story. Like, yeah, it's about a romance, but it's more about her journey. It's not. It's actually more about his journey. This is The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. I gave it a 4. It follows the daughter of the main character in The Deal, which is another one of the first book in another one of her hockey series. And his daughter, is in college, and her dad is doing some things at the college with various people and doesn't like this guy who just started at the school, but he really wants to get in good with him, wants certain opportunities, and so she and him kind of make an agreement. He'll help her with stuff, she'll help him get in good with her dad, and then of course they start dating, and he has to convince people that like he's a good guy. And he's also trying to make the team and be successful at their hockey season. She is also a hockey player, but it's not so much about her journey. Yeah, she wants for things, and occasionally we get some of her playing, but it's mostly his hockey stuff and her watching and falling in love with him. Next up, I put the Mindfuck series right here because like, sure, there's an apple. Like, yeah, okay, this does exist within the story, but, and I think the cover is just trying to give like Twilight but dark, right? It's very much not Twilight because it's just real people existing in real life, and the main character's killing people. It's so crazy how I have forgotten anything that happens in here. I reviewed every single book in my Discord, I reviewed every single individual book because this is a bind up of 5 in a vlog. Like, I read this thoroughly. Don't remember what happened. She is a serial killer. Why? Because, oh, she was like really horrifically assaulted. And she's trying to get back at those people. And there's like a list that she's going throughout the book. And she gets involved with like a police officer, an FBI, whatever he's called. And she has to keep it from him that that's what she's up to. But they're also sleeping together. And what else? I don't know. What's happening in his real life? Can't recall. I gave this a 2.5. It was readable, but it wasn't very compelling. It took like so many books and so long for things to happen. I remember not liking the balance of the murder versus like their relationship. It kept revisiting her trauma over and over again, which is realistic for the character, but it felt unnecessary and honestly a little bit gratuitous at points. I also just like don't like them as a couple. Like, I don't get their relationship. I don't understand her wanting him. Anyway, let's move on to Greta and Valdin by Rebecca K. Riley. This I only put so far at the end because it's like a bag of limes, and sure, there's a moment with a bag of limes. And is there more symbolism? Does it mean more than just like somebody gifting someone a bag of limes? I don't know. I just feel like in contemporary fiction, literary fiction, general like slice of life stories, you have to pull something out of it to put on the cover. Like, are you just gonna put a couple people? I don't know. So this is fine. I love it. Hold on. Love the cover. I think it's so pretty. I think the colors are incredible. But as far as depicting the story, like, I don't think it does, but what could? I can't imagine. This is a story of siblings. They're both queer and they are both grappling with relationships, former relationships, current relationships, and they're just talking. It's just a lot of like talking and chatting and discussing life, but there's so much more to it than just their sibling dynamic. There's a lot of family stuff in here, more than I expected. Other family members, where they came from, their history, what they've shared, their own identities. They are half Maori and Russian. The synopsis says like, Valdin has a good career. His work sends him to this place. He has to confront his feelings. Greta is not letting her painfully unrequited crush get her down, blah, blah, blah. But it's like so much more about other stuff than just these two characters and their relationships. So much more than I expected. I gave it a 4, but having read it a couple weeks ago now, it's not the most memorable one for me, but I did give it a 4. I think because I don't find books make me laugh very often, and there was something about the dialogue that occasionally did that for me. It reminded me of a mix of, let me think, Emily Austen's writing style and main characters, and then like Little and Lion. But I've heard other people recommend this for fans of Big Swiss, which I think is really interesting. I don't think it's too similar to Big Swiss, but Greta, I could see you making certain connections. Or I guess if it's like one of the only queer adult fiction books that you've read, you might think of one when you think of the other. So that's fair. But it's funny because when I finished this, I was like, this reminds me of how I felt reading Big Swiss. Is when I finished it, I was like, it was a fine, like it was a good, I think I had a good time, but a week later, I don't really remember much about it. So the characters while I was reading it felt distinct, but afterwards, I don't think that they are, but I still had a good time reading it, but also not a lot happened. So it was a mixed bag of an experience for me. Finally, I have Dubliners by James Joyce, which is a short story collection. The only reason I put this at the end is because like, what is this? This is nothing. This is just a general classics cover that means nothing. Maybe these are symbolizing roads, train tracks, the connections between people. This is a short story collection about people in Dublin in the early 1900s and feelings that are really relatable like FOMO, obviously not referred to it in that sense, but just the feeling of missing out, wanting to attend a party and then not getting to go, and that feeling, the feeling of romanticizing like a certain life for yourself or a certain relationship, and then once you get into it, it's not everything that you hoped, or not wanting to like follow in your mother's footsteps and then figuring out that you're exactly like who your mother was and maybe her life wasn't so bad. It's just these really nice, simple stories that don't have much of an impact, but you could write an essay on each one of what they're saying, what the underlying messages are, and I ended up giving it a 4. I thought it was a good time. So that's everything that I read in June. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you are going to pick any of these up. Have I persuaded you? Have I steered you away from anything? Always love to hear it in the comments, and I'll see you in a couple days with another video.